Now we've come to actually creating the body of the speech, the meat of the speech sandwich, if you will. And we are going to be talking in this chapter about how you should organize the body of your speech so that it makes sense to your audience. And also some other little pieces of the body that you need to use in order for your speech to really succeed and for your audience to really be able to follow along with you. First, let's talk about how to determine your main ideas. We have to figure out how we're going to get from our specific purpose to the main points that we want to talk about. And we need to figure out what main points we can use in our speech to reach our goal, to achieve our specific purpose. And we need to ask ourselves questions like, how many main points am I going to use? What are those main points going to be, and how should I organize those main points? To answer your first question, you need about 2 to 3 main points in your speech. Any more than this, and your speech kind of becomes a disjointed mess, whereas any fewer than this, and really that's only just one main point and there's no organization to it whatsoever. It's kind of like juggling. If you know how to juggle, 2 to 3 balls is probably the best amount of juggling balls that you could possibly use. Whereas if you have more than 3 balls, that becomes a little bit unwieldy, and you might end up dropping some of them. Whereas if you only have 1 ball, that's not really juggling at all. That's not really speech making. So you need to have at least 2 to 3 main points, because this is what's going to be easiest for both you and your audience to remember. They're going to be able to remember that you talked about A, B, and C, whereas if you go on to talk about D, E, F, and all the other letters, they're not going to be able to remember it as easily, and neither will you. So you really need to work on narrowing down your main points and figuring out what information your audience needs in order to understand your topic. What do they need to know? And how can you organize that information into meaningful chunks so that they can easily remember it? That's what we mean when we are narrowing down your main points. You might start off with 5, 6 main points, but really when you look at it, you will be able to see that, hey, points 3 and 4 kind of go together, so maybe I can put them into one main point rather than trying to separate them. Really narrow it down, try to get to 2 to 3. Something to keep in mind when you are writing your main points is that they should all be united to one another, probably around your specific purpose. Each of your main points should fit together to help you achieve your ultimate goal in the speech of informing or persuading your audience about your topic. The other side of that coin, though, is that your main points need to be separate from one another. So each main point needs to have a distinct idea that it's talking about that none of the other points are talking about. For example, you shouldn't be talking about something in main point 3 that you already covered in main point 1, because that becomes a little bit redundant. So you need to make sure that you have 2 to 3 separate ideas that all unite around your specific purpose. In addition, we want to make sure that our main points are balanced as far as time goes. For example, we want to make sure that in a 6 to 8 minute speech, we aren't spending 5 minutes on main point 1, leaving only 1 minute for each of our other main points. Because when we do that, main point 1 seems awesome, but then main point 2 and main point 3 seem really rushed and not very thought through, and it might seem like you just don't have enough information to fill those. When you do, it's just that you didn't spend your time wisely. So when you really break it down, a 6 to 8 minute speech isn't that long. You have 30 seconds to a minute for the introduction, another 30 seconds to a minute for the conclusion, and then approximately 1.5 minutes for each of your main points. Now, you could spend 2 minutes on main point 1, a minute on main point 2, and 1.5 minutes on main point 3, because there's not really a huge difference there. But when you're spending too much time on one of your main points, it makes the others seem like they are not as important or that they are maybe inconsequential. And that's not what we want. We want to make sure that each of our main points is just as important as the others in order for us to achieve our specific purpose. In addition, we want to be sure that we have what we call a parallel structure to our main points. In other words, we use the same language to write out our main points so that they are all easier to remember. For example, my specific purpose might be to inform my audience about the benefits of karate. My first main point might be the benefits that karate has to the mind. My second main point might be that karate has benefits to the body. And my third main point is that karate has benefits to the social life. So, myself and my audience can simply remember mind, body, and social life because I use the same language to describe those three things. Makes it easier for you to remember, makes it easier for your audience to remember. So having that parallel structure also shows how united your main points are, but also demonstrates how they are separate from one another. Finally, we want to make sure that we are maintaining a logical flow of information in our speeches. Remember that our audiences crave organization. They are expecting us to talk about A, and then B, and then C. And if we were to talk about C, and then A, and then B, that would be a little bit confusing for our audience. And we're going to talk later on in this chapter about different ways that we can organize the information in our speeches so that it is logical for our audience, so that they can easily follow along from A to B to C.